Have you ever wondered why some people seem to despise your kindness, even when you've done nothing but try to understand them? You feel their emotions like they're your own. You offer them patience when they're difficult. You see the pain behind their anger and respond with compassion instead of judgment. Yet they treat you with contempt, dismiss your kind efforts to help, or even actively work to destroy your peace of mind. Here's what Carl Jung discovered about empaths that will change everything you think you know about human relationships. Your kindness might actually be triggering their hatred. Most people believe that empathy automatically creates connection and understanding in return. But Jung's decades of research into the human psyche revealed a disturbing truth that will shake you to your core. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll understand the dark psychology behind why emotionally sensitive people often become targets, and, more importantly, how to protect yourself from becoming a victim of your own kindness. Carl Jung said something that most empaths find impossible to believe. Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. But what Jung discovered about awakened people, true empaths, will disturb you. When you can see into someone's emotional reality, when you can feel their hidden pain and unhealed wounds, you're not just being compassionate, you're holding up the most terrifying mirror they'll ever encounter. Here's the shocking truth Jung uncovered about empathic mirroring. When you look at someone with genuine empathy, your eyes don't just see their behavior, they see through their mask, straight into their soul. And according to Carl Jung, this creates what he called psychological exposure. Your empathy strips away their carefully constructed persona and reveals the raw, unhealed parts of themselves they've spent their entire lives hiding. Think about it. When you meet someone new and you can immediately sense their loneliness, their fear, their deep-seated shame, you're not just being intuitive, you're accessing what Jung called the collective unconscious, the shared emotional reality that connects all human beings. And here's where it gets disturbing. Jung discovered that most people would rather die than have their emotional truth exposed, even to themselves. Your empathy forces them to confront everything they've been running from. Every defense mechanism they've built, every lie they've told themselves, every wound they've refused to heal. Your presence makes it all visible. And this creates what Jung termed unconscious rage. They don't consciously know why they hate you. They just know that being around you makes them feel exposed, vulnerable, and deeply uncomfortable. Now there's something even more sinister at work here. Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what happens when your empathy irritates people? What does that reveal about what you represent to them? When you operate from genuine empathy, you're demonstrating what Jung called emotional authenticity. You're not wearing a mask. You're not performing. You're simply being your true self, feeling deeply and responding from that authentic place. According to Carl Jung, this authenticity is like psychological kryptonite to people who have been living behind masks their entire lives. Jung discovered that most people develop what he called a false self early in life, a personality designed to get approval, avoid rejection, and fit into society's expectations. They become so identified with this false self that they forget their authentic nature even exists. But when they encounter your empathy, something terrifying happens. Your authenticity reminds them that they're living a lie. And here's the twisted part. Jung realized that instead of inspiring them to become more authentic, your empathy often triggers what he called authenticity rage. They become obsessed with proving that you're just as fake as they are. They cannot accept that genuine empathy exists because admitting your authenticity would mean facing their own inauthenticity. This is why toxic people will spend enormous amounts of energy trying to expose your true motives. They'll dig into your past, analyze your every action, and create elaborate stories about why you're really being empathetic. According to Carl Jung, they're not investigating you. They're projecting their own manipulation tactics onto you. They assume you must have hidden agendas because that's the only way they know how to operate. But here's where Jung's insights become truly revolutionary. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And your empathy forces people to confront their own self-acceptance, or lack thereof. Here's what Jung discovered about the individuation process, the journey toward becoming your authentic self. Jung realized that psychological development happens in stages, and most people get stuck at the level of social conformity. They learn to follow the rules, fit in, and avoid conflict, but they never develop their own inner compass. Jung called this being unconscious, living according to others' expectations rather than your own truth. When you show up as an empath, you're demonstrating what Jung called individuation. You've developed beyond social conformity into authentic self-expression. You trust your inner knowing. You feel deeply. You respond from your heart rather than your head. According to Carl Jung, this level of development threatens people who are still trapped in unconscious conformity. Your empathy highlights their emotional stunting. Your authenticity exposes their people-pleasing. Your depth reveals their surface-level existence. Jung discovered that this creates what he called developmental envy. They don't just want what you have, they want to destroy what you have because it reminds them of everything they're not. And this leads us to one of Jung's most disturbing discoveries. Carl Jung said, "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking." But what happens when your empathy threatens someone's power structure? Here's what Jung understood about empaths and power dynamics. When you can feel someone's emotions, you automatically see through their power games. You can sense when they're manipulating, when they're lying, when they're trying to control the narrative. Your empathy gives you access to emotional truth, and emotional truth destroys psychological manipulation. According to Carl Jung, this makes you an existential threat to anyone whose life is built on deception, control, or manipulation. They can't fool you the way they fool others. They can't charm you into ignoring red flags. They can't gaslight you into questioning your own reality because your empathy gives you direct access to what's really happening beneath the surface. Yet here's the terrifying part. Jung realized that when manipulative people encounter someone they can't control, they don't back down, they escalate. They become obsessed with breaking your empathy, with making you doubt your intuition, with convincing you that your gift is actually a curse. This is what Jung called empathic targeting. They will use your own empathy against you by playing the victim, by making you feel guilty for setting boundaries, by convincing you that your sensitivity is the problem. They know that empaths have one fatal flaw. They can always see the wounded child beneath the toxic behavior, and they want to heal it. And this brings us to Jung's most important warning about empathic vulnerability. Carl Jung said, "The collective unconscious is made up of archetypes, universal patterns that shape human behavior. And one of the most powerful archetypes is what Jung called the scapegoat." Here's what Jung discovered about group dynamics and empaths. When you're empathetic in a group of unconscious people, you don't just threaten individuals. You threaten the entire group's psychological equilibrium. Your authenticity highlights everyone's inauthenticity. Your emotional honesty exposes everyone's emotional dishonesty. According to Carl Jung, this triggers what he called collective projection. The group unconsciously agrees to make you the problem. They project all their shame, guilt, and self-hatred onto you. You become the repository for everything they don't want to face about themselves. But here's where it gets really dark. Jung realized that scapegoating isn't random. It's strategic. The group unconsciously chooses the person who represents everything they wish they could be, but are too afraid to become. They choose the empath because your emotional courage reminds them of their emotional cowardice. This is why empaths often find themselves isolated, misunderstood, and blamed for problems they didn't create. You're not just dealing with individual toxicity, you're dealing with collective unconsciousness that needs someone to carry its shadow. And this leads to a crucial realization. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But what happens when you make the unconscious conscious? What happens when you understand exactly why toxic people target your empathy? Here's Jung's profound insight about empathic awakening. The people who hate your empathy are actually showing you something crucial about yourself. They're revealing where you might be giving away your power, where you might be seeking validation through your sensitivity, where you might be trying to heal others instead of healing yourself. According to Carl Jung, true empathy comes from what he called differentiated consciousness. You can feel others' emotions without taking on their emotions. You can understand their pain without absorbing their pain. You can offer compassion without sacrificing your boundaries. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes empaths attract toxic people because their empathy isn't actually empathy. It's what Jung called emotional codependency. You're not feeling their emotions to help them. You're feeling their emotions to feel needed, to feel special, to feel like you have purpose. Jung discovered that this codependent empathy is like emotional blood in the water. It attracts every psychological shark within miles because they can sense that you'll sacrifice yourself to feel valuable. They know you'll absorb their pain, carry their burdens, and make their problems your responsibility. So how do you know the difference between healthy empathy and codependent empathy? Carl Jung said, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." And this applies to empathy as well. Here's what Jung discovered about authentic empathy. First, authentic empathy doesn't drain you. It comes from overflow, not emptiness. When you're empathetic from a place of inner fullness, you can give without depleting yourself. Second, authentic empathy has boundaries. You can feel someone's pain without making it your responsibility to fix it. Third, authentic empathy doesn't seek validation. You're not being empathetic to prove you're good, to get appreciation, or to be seen as special. You're empathetic because it's simply who you are. And fourth, authentic empathy includes yourself. You extend the same compassion to your own emotions that you extend to others. According to Carl Jung, when you develop this kind of differentiated empathy, toxic people lose their power over you. They can't manipulate someone who understands manipulation. They can't gaslight someone who trusts their own emotional reality. They can't control someone who has healthy boundaries. But here's the beautiful paradox Jung discovered. When your empathy becomes truly authentic, you actually attract fewer toxic people. Not because you've become cold or closed off, but because you're no longer radiating the unconscious signals that attract emotional predators. Healthy people appreciate authentic empathy. They don't feel threatened by your ability to see them clearly because they're not hiding from themselves. They don't try to destroy your gift because they recognize it as a gift, not a threat. And this brings us to Jung's ultimate wisdom about being empathic in a toxic world. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And what you choose to become determines how your empathy is experienced by others. Here's Jung's roadmap for empathic mastery. First, understand that their hatred of your empathy is about them, not you. It's about their relationship with their own emotions, their own authenticity, their own unhealed wounds. Second, use their reactions as information about their consciousness level, not as evidence of your worth. Third, develop what Jung called empathic boundaries. You can see clearly without taking on what you see. Fourth, practice what Jung called conscious compassion. You can understand someone's pain without making it your responsibility to heal it. And finally, Remember that Jung discovered the goal isn't to be liked by everyone. The goal is to be authentic while maintaining healthy relationships with those who can appreciate your authenticity. Carl Jung was right when he said, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And an awakened empath's gift is unshakable. But here's the final truth Jung would want you to understand. The people who try to destroy your empathy are actually your greatest teachers. They're showing you exactly where you need stronger boundaries, clearer intentions, and deeper self-acceptance. They're not your enemies. They're your mirrors, reflecting back the parts of yourself that still seek validation through your sensitivity. When you can see them as mirrors instead of threats, you've mastered what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold paradox. You can be empathetic and boundaried, compassionate and protected, understanding and unshakable. This is Jung's ultimate discovery about empathic mastery. When you can feel deeply without losing yourself, when you can understand others without sacrificing yourself, when you can offer compassion without expecting anything in return, you've achieved what Jung called psychological freedom. You're no longer a victim of other people's unconsciousness, and you're no longer a prisoner of your own need to heal the world. You're simply, authentically, powerfully empathic. And that changes everything. Now, if you found value in these psychological patterns, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to explore about Jung's insights into human nature, and your support helps me continue bringing these deep psychological truths to light. Remember, the world doesn't need fewer empaths. It needs empaths who understand that sensitivity without boundaries is self-destruction, and that true compassion sometimes means refusing to carry other people's emotional baggage. Your empathy isn't too much. It's exactly what this world needs. Just make sure you're using Jung's wisdom to protect it while you share it.